All right, Glenn. Well, welcome on the Rental Journal podcast.
Mark, thank you for having me.
It's exciting. It's the first time I've actually been to your office.
It
is. I lived in Las Vegas for a year, and so I used to see all the Ahern machines in Las Vegas when I was coming off the highway. So it's quite exciting seeing the Ahern Australia business as well.
Yeah, well, the Ahern business in the US, particularly the rental business, is pretty significant, and particularly in Vegas, it's quite a large facility.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so just for the listeners, do you just want to give us a bit of a rundown on how you first got exposed to the equipment rental industry?
Oh yeah, my first exposure was when I was quite young, so I was just under 16 years old, and I was fortunate enough to have landed myself an apprenticeship as a plant mechanic with Coates Hire. So fresh out of year 10, and that was my first entry and knowledge of the rental industry at all. So prior to that, I had no knowledge of the rental industry.
Wow. So not many people become a mechanic in the equipment rental industry from day one. And I think that's probably one thing that a lot of companies are struggling with. They want to get more mechanics into the business. So how did you get that first gig with Coates?
Yeah, look, it was, I'd actually been, as a young fellow looking for an apprenticeship, I was, looking around for, and contacting various companies, to see what they had available at that time. And I had done work experience through Detroit Diesel, and the fellow at Detroit Diesel gave me a lead that Coates Hire might be employing apprentices. So, I took that on hand and contacted them, and I was fortunate enough to get an interview and get a start.
Wow. So did you know anything about equipment rental when you first joined?
Nothing about equipment rental. What I did know about was, as a young fellow, I rode motorbikes and those sorts of things, so I tinkered around with engines on bikes, etc. And I did a work experience, as I said, at Detroit Diesel, and they. I suppose that gave me a bit of a grounding of what I wanted to do, but nothing within the hire and rental industry.
Because I guess like most people that aren't involved in the industry, when they think of mechanics, they think of cars. And a plant is a completely different beast, and there's so many different types of mechanics in that plant side as well. So what were you specialising in? You said diesel.
Well, no, I was actually, prior to starting at Coates, the only thing I'd worked on at all as a young bloke was just motorbike engines, and as I said, Detroit Diesel, it was really trucks.
Yeah.
So I'd spent a couple of weeks doing work experience with the guys servicing and repairing trucks, but certainly not plant. So that hadn't even entered my mind.
Do you remember what the first thing you worked on when you were at Coates, or what type of machines were there?
Obviously, as a first-year apprentice, you're assigned to a tradesman, and the first thing that I worked on was a John Deere tractor.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was. It was a unit which they used for towing the road rollers. So, that was my very first machine which I laid hands on.
And whereabouts was this?
So Coates head office at that time, I was based in the Coates head office workshop, and that was based down at Kamala Road down in Miranda in Sydney, New South Wales.
Okay, and so what you obviously said you were working on motorbikes and stuff like that when you were younger. Like, was that what got you interested in becoming a mechanic?
Yeah, I guess so. It was, when you're 15 years old, you really don't have a great understanding, or I didn't at least have a great understanding of what it was that I wanted to do with my life. But I did know that I enjoyed tinkering around with engines, and I'd done a bit of work experience, and that kind of reinforced that. So I just figured, why not do something you enjoy?
That's nice. And so, started as a mechanic at Coates. What was your career progression when you were working through the business?
Yeah, so I completed my apprenticeship at Coates. This is quite a long story. So I completed my apprenticeship at Coates and continued to work in the workshop as a tradesman for about a year. They then offered me a role as a roving field service technician throughout the the metropolitan area of Sydney branches. So I was, driving around and assisting with breakdowns, etc., from the branch network. And did that for quite some time, and through that role, I heard that there was an opening for what they were calling an assistant branch manager at Alexandria branch. It was effectively a hire controller type role, and I thought, well, that might be something I might be interested in doing differently. Being in and around the branches, I'd had the opportunity to work with some of the guys who were working in those roles, and I thought that might be another opportunity for me, outside of being a mechanic. Not that I didn't like being a mechanic, but I just saw the potential for something more.
Yeah.
So, and I do remember it. It was a Wednesday, and Wednesday morning I was in the head office, and I called in to see the then operations manager, a gentleman by the name of Alan Forbes, and I inquired about the role. I said, look, I'm interested in this role you've got going over at Alexandria branch, and he sat down and had a chat to me, and the following Monday I started there.
Wow. So how much of an advantage was it moving into that hire controller role, having a mechanical background?
Oh, I suppose the benefit for me was I knew all of the equipment. See, part of the challenge in working in a general equipment industry is actually understanding the equipment and what it does and how it works. So I found it to be really advantageous. The change for me was really in and around the customer contact and communication and developing those relationships. And then looking at the allocation of equipment and those things. That was the new part for me. Understanding the equipment and being able to understand what a customer's requirements and what machine would fill that requirement was quite easy.
Yeah, because I think it's very easy for hire controllers to get nervous when they're talking to a customer and they just refer to the specs. Oh, this machine can do X, Y, Z, and sort of work through it. But when you truly understand the capabilities of the machines and what it can do, you almost like let your barriers down a little bit, and you want to learn more about the customer's requirements and work together.
Yeah, I think that's true. Certainly, understanding and being able to put forward a piece of equipment, I came kind of naturally because of my understanding of the equipment. The dealing with the customers was another matter, and I will say it did take me some time to, come up to speed and be comfortable dealing with those customers, because the Alexandria branch at Coates at that time was their busiest branch in the country with its and the highest revenue, and it was a bit of a cauldron. So the inquiries and phone calls were thick and fast, and you were really on the move all the time. So but one thing I did find, Mark, was that after a period of time I really thought I'd found my calling. And it was a role that I really enjoyed, and I thought I did pretty well in. Yeah.
So you got thrown into the deep end, yeah? Thrown into the biggest and best branch, yeah?
Yeah. Well, it was. It was a little bit of a sink or swim moment. So, but look, I mean, it turned out really well, and from there, I worked at Alexandria branch then for about 2 years, and an opportunity presented itself as a branch manager over at the Coates Chatswood branch. So I applied for that role, and I was fortunate enough to be successful in moving into that position. And at 23 years of age, I became Coates' youngest branch manager at that time. So wow. It was a little feather in the cap for me at that period. So. And that was really good too. I mean, it was a different type of branch. It was a smaller branch with a smaller team. But as a branch manager, that was a good opportunity for me to start to develop some management skills. And and the Coates business itself was very, very good in the early days in terms of training, like internal training programs for their people, particularly in and around customer service. So in line with my move, I mean, the business put me through some training courses as well, just to make sure that I succeeded, which was really good.
So talk me through, because you went from a mechanic to a hire controller to a branch manager, and that's all at a pretty young age, working through those roles. Were you pushed to have that the eagerness to progress in your career, or was that something that was sort of put forward to you? Like, how did you sort of take on that challenge?
Look, I've always been a fairly motivated sort of person. So once I invest myself in something, I like to progress. And I saw that within Coates, I saw other people within the business progressing as well. It wasn't just me, but other people progressing through the company. And I just saw that there was opportunity. And, so look, it's a lot of that was around self-drive, but it's also having the opportunity to be able to be provided for you. So, and I was very thankful for Coates for that.
And so then becoming a branch manager, now you're talking about managing a team and working together. So that's another lot of skills that you would have had to learn along the way.
Yeah, look, working as part of a team and managing a team. Fortunately, in my younger life, I played a lot of football, and and that is a real team environment, and captained football team. So it wasn't a big step, and even as a hire controller at the Alexandria branch, you were quite often, looking and directing teams for particular tasks, etc. So it wasn't a massive change in terms of what I'd been doing at Alexandria branch, except now you were the person responsible. So that did, that created its own challenges and growth for me, growth opportunity for me. So, and that went really well, and the little Chatswood branch, ended up performing, quite admirably, and we increased revenues, and we had a really, really good team of people. So it's and that went very well. So I was only there for about 2 years. And Alan Forbes, who was the operations manager I mentioned before, had moved actually up into the general manager's role at that time, and he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "How would you like to come back and manage Alexandria branch?" So, next opportunity on the line. So, I'm never one to knock back an opportunity. So, I then, took that on board, moved back to run the Alexandria branch again, which was, still in full swing. And I managed that branch then for the following 4 to 5 years. So it was, but again, larger team then. So we had a team of 12 at the branch at the time, with technicians and drivers and yardmen and assistant managers. So I had 3 assistant managers basically in that branch at that time.
And so being a branch manager at Alexandria, the busiest and largest branch, having experience being a mechanic and a hire controller, how advantageous was that for your mentoring of your staff?
In terms of mentoring of the staff, being a mechanic, I don't know that actually assisted me that greatly. But in terms of product knowledge and being able to impart that product knowledge to people, that was the benefit. And particularly in being able to demonstrate the equipment to customers and to other staff so that they understood that they're demonstrating it correctly, certainly that played a big part in that. In terms of the management of the larger team, that just became part and parcel of the responsibility of managing that branch. But and it all comes down to having the right people around you, And in that branch, I was fortunate enough to have some real stars. I know you've had on a podcast previously. I employed Grant Voicey there, and Grant was one of my assistants. I had another guy by the name of Brett Wright, who was, also progressed through the Coates organisation, and another gentleman by the name of Brett McAleer. And those 3 guys through that period were champions.
Yeah. And so you were there for a number of years, and then what was the next step?
Yeah, so as I managed the Alexandria branch, and things were going along, quite well for us there. Things were, the branch was still performing. Everyone was happy with our performance, and I think it was early 90s. The business bought a company called Prestige Portables, and so through an acquisition, and I was contacted again to see whether I might like to head up the portable building business for New South Wales. So another opportunity presents itself, and I leapt at that opportunity, and it was great. It gave me a whole new outlook as well, because there was new customers, new products to learn. There were different customer segments and business segments we were supplying to. So it wasn't just construction. It was, because we did the portable building and toilet business, did events. It also did commercial type applications like schools. So it was actually quite different in a number of aspects, and opened my eyes to a lot of different market segments, which really I hadn't been dealing too heavily in previously. But but it was the learning the products was actually even though people just think of portable buildings, when you start getting to some of these commercial complexes, you really need to understand the product well in order to be able to quote particular jobs.
Yeah, and so I guess we'll stop there in terms of your career, and we'll continue soon. So when you've got these young mechanics that are coming through a business or a hire controller or a branch manager, like what advice would you give to them in terms of their career? Maybe let's hone in on maybe a mechanic to start off with.
Well, in terms of advice to them, I mean, it depends on what the individual wants to do themselves. Now, for me, I enjoyed being a mechanic, but I guess I thought that there may be other things that I could do. And look, I mean, the mechanic trade course provides you with a wonderful set of skills, and they're skills which are transferable into other areas. And it's just around having the right disciplines in place. It's around, having attention for detail. Those sorts of things are transferable into other types of roles and jobs. In terms of what advice would I give them? Identify what it is that you actually want to do if for the future, and then set a path or look for a path that's going to take you there. Never knock back an opportunity is what I'll say.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people, they don't like stepping outside their comfort zone and they get comfortable. Yeah. So I think, is that something that you really embrace, like really stepping outside your comfort zone and taking on opportunities?
Yeah, look, I had this old adage that it's bite off as much as you can and then chew like hell, right? It's for me, it's like if this is the path that I see myself progressing in, then I need to go in with both feet and actually do it to the best of my ability, and then do whatever else I need to do to actually achieve and be successful in that role. And I've just adapted that to every role that I've put myself into.
And I think something that I've even noticed is a lot of times they'll be working hard and they don't think people notice, but people do. People know who are the ones that are putting the after hours, the extra effort and stuff like that. And so it's very important for whatever role you're in, don't think that it's not been unseen.
No, exactly right. Look, an example of that for myself was I did the things that not a lot of other people wanted to do. So within the Coates organisation, as an assistant branch manager and a branch manager, Coates ran at that point in time what they called an after-hours phone service. And we had, initially a group of people who were rostered on to answering the phone call after our branches for the state, after the branches had closed. So over a period of, a year, I was the last man standing. So I had that thing full time. Wow. And I ran that for 4 years.
Jeez.
So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
So dinner time, whatever it is.
Yeah, doesn't matter where it is. You could be out at a function, you still got the phone with you and you're taking calls, and then you find yourself sitting in a corner somewhere making phone calls and coordinating a breakdown repair or coordinating a delivery. But those are the things which I did. I mean, look, don't get me wrong, there was a monetary aspect which was associated with that as well, which I was quite keen on. But at the same time, I mean, it was me demonstrating what I was prepared to do and how much commitment I had to the organisation.
No, that's amazing. I think, I really want to hone in on that and make sure people realise that putting that extra effort in does get noticed. And when you're thinking about your career, don't box yourself in and think that that's it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, your career can be what you want it to be. I mean, you just need to, as you say, work hard, do the things that need to be done, and and try and be noticed. I mean, and hard work typically gets you there.
I had someone on the podcast that says they don't believe in luck. It's like the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a real statement.
Yeah. So then, portables business. What was the next step from there?
Yeah, so I ran the portables business then for 2.5 years for New South Wales, and during that period, the then general manager Alan Forbes had stepped out of the Eastern Region general manager's role into a national GM of assets role, and we had a new general manager come on board, a fellow by the name of Trevor James. Now you may know Trevor. He then went on to found On-Site Industrial with Malcolm Williams, who owned On-Site Portable Building Rentals, which is today called On-Site Rentals. and Trevor then was the general manager for Eastern Region, and I got a call from him asking for a meeting, and he sat down with me to inquire about my interest in becoming the New South Wales operations manager, or the Eastern Region operations manager at that time. And again, another opportunity presented itself, and I jumped at that opportunity because this was, for me, this was a step up into a senior management role, a real senior management role. And I think it's the busiest role I've had in my life. So the operations manager role within the Coates organisation at the time was responsible for all asset management and asset purchasing. It was also responsible for all maintenance activities and responsible for all of the staff and the branch network. So, all of the branch managers within New South Wales reporting into you, all of the service teams reporting through to you. And as I say, responsible for the procurement of the equipment and the, monitoring utilisation and all those sorts of things which go with asset management. So it was a really, really busy role. I mean, I wasn't there on my own. I mean, we had a team of people in the national head office, and I had a great guy by the name of David White, who was my plant controller at the time, and he and I, we did some really great things.
Yeah, so as you're moving up these roles, becoming more senior, taking on more responsibility, you now have to actually think about a P&L as well to a certain extent. Yeah. So these skills, where did you learn these? Was this something that you learned on your own, or did you get trained?
No. So look, I mean, as I said, Coates was actually very good in terms of providing their people with training. And for me, moving through some of these roles, because even when I was in the portable building business, that was my first introduction really to real P&L and managing a P&L for a business. So in light of that, I mean, they then sent me off to do courses in finance and etc. to ensure that I had the skill set to be able to effectively manage that business. Moving across then into the operations manager's role again, I mean, they then sent me off to uni to do courses and finally provided me with qualification at the end. But it was they provided the right necessary tools for me to succeed.
Yeah. So then what was the next step from there? Because you're really starting to move up into a senior manager role within Coates.
Well, I was. So look, unfortunately then Trevor left the business, and we had a couple of starters come in as general manager. One as a temporary, and another fellow who just didn't work out. And look, I spoke to Jim Brown, who was the chief executive at the time, and basically asked him to give me an opportunity. And with the support of then Alan Forbes and the then finance director Gary Woods, Jim took a punt on me. And so, I mean, I'd been the operations manager at that time for about 3 years and had been reasonably successful in that role. And he decided, the people that he'd put on from externally hadn't worked, and I thought he might as well look internally. Mm-hmm. So I was fortunate enough then to become the general manager of Eastern Region, and that was in 2001.
Yeah. So when someone takes a punt on you like that, and you're making a big jump again to another new role, like how does that make you feel as an employee?
Oh, I felt fantastic as an employee. I mean, it was for me, I thought that the company, number one, had invested in me most of my life. I mean, I'd been there since I'd left school. And they had really invested in me over that period of time, and they had really provided me with wonderful, wonderful opportunity, up to get to that point. And that showed that they had confidence in me as a person, and that they were prepared to also work with me to make sure that my skills grew in line with the responsibility of the role. So, it was a really good environment. And how did it make me feel? I mean, it was just thrilling. It really was. I mean, if I look at my starting date at 1981 and general manager then at 2001, so it was a 20-year journey from first year apprentice to general manager.
Wow, that's amazing. That's like a story that you want to share within the organisation.
Yeah, it is. And it's a story that back in the day, Coates did share through the organisation, because it is a good news story.
Yeah, definitely. So
of what people can achieve within the company.
Yeah, definitely. And I think being able to understand all the roles going up into that point as well. It's very, very, like Adrian Manning's a great example. Like he's the COO at the moment at Coates, but he started as a high controller. Like he understands what it means to work in a branch. I think it's very hard for these execs that come in that haven't really got that experience. Like that gives you a massive, massive leg up.
Yeah, look, I really agree with that. I mean, what that enabled me to do was when I was talking to branch managers or high controllers or other people within the company about issues that they were facing, I mean, I was aware of them and I could relate to them because I'd been through those same situations myself and was able then in a number of situations be able to provide them with a course of action which actually rectified their problem or were able to work collectively to actually fix that issue. So it actually gave you a really good grounding into understanding how that business ran from the ground up.
Yeah. Someone came on the podcast once and they mentioned when it comes to mentoring people, and rather than just shooting advice across the table and telling someone what to do, it's much better to share experiences. And because you've got that experiences, when someone says, "Oh shit, the transport's late because the truck's not coming," or whatever, whatever it is, you can relate to it and say, "I've been in this situation. This is how I handled it in the past. Let's work together. You come up with a solution and let's work on what it might look like." Rather than you just sort of winging it and just shooting advice across the table.
Yeah, exactly right. Now that is exactly the case. But it's also the case as well when you're looking at putting through a new initiative. From a management perspective, you're looking at implementing a new initiative. When you're talking to your team about that initiative, at least they understand that you know how things work at the ground level, and that this should then integrate and work for them. So there's confidence in both ways. That's how I found things.
Yeah. So then coming up to the East Coast general manager, then there was some big acquisitions coming in during that period.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I was appointed into the role of general manager in 2001, and then in early 2002, Coates acquired Recair. So that was another opportunity, as I'll call it, and. It was Coates and Recair joining together was the two largest general equipment rental companies at that time. Merging together and joining forces. So it was a really exciting period for the company.
Yeah. So when you think back to that time, like what do you remember? Because bringing two large organizations together is challenging. It's merging cultures, merging businesses, merging customers, all that sort of stuff. So what do you remember from that period?
Yeah, look, I mean, it was all of that. The merging of cultures in particular was something that we had to put a plan in place for. We had two groups of people, particularly in the sales teams, who'd been out competing against each other previously, and were now working side by side. So there was the allocation of customer accounts, to be sorted out. There was the rationalisation of branches. There was and people. There was the rationalisation of assets. So we took the opportunity at that time as well to clean up the fleet at the same time, and but it was really about bringing the two businesses together. Now, typically at that time, every location in New South Wales at Coates had a location, so did Recair. So there was a whole lot of synergies which the business was looking to extract from that acquisition, and we set about working through that process quite quickly. That then included, as I said, we talked about the sales teams. We kept all of the sales team on throughout from both businesses, but then it was about separation of accounts and those sorts of things, and just pulling people back in line, and back into working together, because at some points in time, you would find that people would revert to their prior reporting line, for example, for trying to get answers on things, and they might not report to that person anymore. So it was about just pulling the team back together, and just putting in place the right structure for the business to move forward. And I do recall that we ran workshops on Coates and Recair working together. where we talked about the strategy, and we talked about what the future looked like and how we were going to get there. And I think that those sessions really started to bring the team together.
Yeah. And then eventually the National Hire merger happened as well. And so now we're talking about three of the largest rental businesses in Australia all merging into to become one, really, which I can't imagine the change management that was happening during these years.
Okay, so I'll just take a step back if I can. Prior to that, we actually went through another change in Coates, which was P64, which was basically Project 6 into 4. So where Coates actually merged the two specialist business units back into the 4 geographical business units. And that created another change within the organisation. But in terms of the business performance, it actually improved the business performance at that point in time. But then as you say, I mean, then came the acquisition, the Carlisle national acquisition of Coates, and I was involved in the early part of that, but not the latter part of that. So. My memory of that is, and I'd just like to state that the Coates business in 2007, prior to the merger, was actually a really good and solid business. I mean, at that time, prior to the acquisition, Coates was turning over $850 million, and the Eastern region business itself was turning over $200 million per annum, and in terms of key metrics, Coates was up in the top 10 of rental companies in terms of key metrics globally. So it was performing really strongly, and the business had a view that in the following year or two that we would touch that $1 billion in our own right. I guess what isn't as well known is that prior to the acquisition, executives of Seven had actually contacted the Coates board to talk about a potential merger of the National Hire business into Coates, where then Seven would take an equity position in Coates and potentially get a seat on the board. Now, the Coates board, for whatever reason at that time, declined that offer. And some 6 odd months later, I think a consortium of 2 private equity firms, I think it was Nikko and KKK, put in an expression of interest to acquire Coates, and that then was put to the board, and the board, doing the right thing, then determined that we needed to conduct a strategic review of the Coates business in order to really ascertain what the value of the Coates business was at that time, and whether the offer that had been received was actually reasonable or not. So that process then involved Macquarie Bank getting involved and completing their strategic review. And my role in all of that was to talk through with Macquarie for Eastern Region's perspective, what our plans were, what we were looking to do in the future, our assets, and provide them with all the information that they needed in order to ascertain the value of the business. And once that was actually completed, I guess, the sale process is actually then commenced, because the board then says, okay, well, now we understand what the value is. We actually have, somebody who's put an expression of interest in, and now what we need to do is probably look to see whether there are other interested parties who may look to, provide a better offer. So, and the sale process is underway.
Yeah. So you're basically saying that there was an opportunity prior for Coates to actually have a seat on the board, and it could have been a very different picture.
What would have been a different picture, because what would have happened is that the National Hire business potentially could have been merged into the existing Coates business, and with Seven having a seat on the Coates board, that's what they were looking for. That's my understanding at the time. So But that it could have been a slightly different scenario. But at the end of the day, I mean, it is what it is now.
Yeah.
So, and as in history shows now that the National Hire and Carlisle consortium, was the successful bidder for the business, and and they've gone on to do bigger and better things with the company.
Yeah. So then what was your role after that? It sounds like you finished up with the business during that period.
So look, I decided at that point in time that my time at Coates had run its course, and I saw some further opportunity outside of the Coates business at that time. My next role was actually I moved after leaving Coates. I went on to work with both the prior Coates COO, Gary Woods, and the prior Coates General Manager of Business Strategy and Development, Barry Meal, who formed a company called RSC, or Rental Services Corp, which was a consulting company to the rental industry. And and then we set about then providing consultancy services to a number of rental companies in terms of business improvement strategy and initiatives, and assisting them to improve their businesses. So and during I worked as a consultant then for the next 4 years. So for companies like Hire Equip in New Zealand, I work with equipment manufacturers such as Clark Equipment, rental companies, Active Hire, and Snorkel.
Oh wow, nice. So we'll get to Snorkel in a second.
Yeah.
So working at Coates for that amount of years, and then seeing that whole acquisition process unfold, and then finishing up, that must have been painful. Because you're really part of like you're a family. Like you're there from 15 years old.
Yeah. Look, in New South Wales, I knew everybody in my team. I mean, because I'd been there for, at that time, 27 years. So, look, it was a little bit of I suppose, a sad occasion to leave at that point in time. But at the same time, I could see for me that there were other things that I could do, and another journey that I could commence. So it wasn't something which I was sad about, in certain elements, but I could see that there was a positive future for myself going forward.
That's good. So back to Snorkel. So you're going through the consulting, you're doing consulting to various companies, and Snorkel is one of them. Today, now I'm at the Snorkel office with Ahern in Australia. So how did that eventually come about?
Yeah, well, look, prior to joining Snorkel here, whilst I was consulting, after about 4 years, I got a tap on the shoulder from a placement company, and there was a role available, or they were looking to fill a role with a company called Waco Quickform, and Waco Quickform is Australia's largest scaffolding rental company. And so I'd been out consulting for some time, and I thought, look, I'd take the opportunity to go and talk to these guys and just understand more about the business. And I was aware of the business. I knew of them, but I didn't know a lot about how they operated and the products, and how that actually worked, from whether it was a rental company or whether it was actually a more of a contracting business. Yeah. So I went along to that interview, and next thing I knew, I was the general manager of Waco Quickform Industrial for Australia.
Wow. So moving into just a pure scaffolding business, was that a bit of a wake-up call?
Yeah, it was very different. It was quite different, and I had thoughts that scaffolding was quite an easy product, and when you actually then start looking at not so much just the product itself, but the installation of that product, then it becomes quite a really interesting business, because it really turns out that whilst they rent the product, I mean it's a contracting business. Really. So
the amount of people that go into just installing the scaffolding.
Well, particularly in the industrial segments, which I was responsible for, which was in and around mining and gas plants, and and those areas. I mean, it was all contracting. So look, again, it was another new experience for me. It was additional skills which I acquired, working there, and I really enjoyed working for Waco Quickform, and that was another company that really looked after its employees. And a business which invested in them as well through education, etc. And again, they put me through further university courses, whilst I was there, which have really benefited me in the longer term. But and whilst I was happy doing what I was doing at Waco, an opportunity presented itself at what was being rebranded as Ahern Australia. So everybody knew the business as Snorkel Australia, but then in 2013 a gentleman by the name of Don Ahern purchased the majority share of the Snorkel business from Tanfield, and in Australia that meant a rebranding of the business from Snorkel to Ahern. Anyway, so I saw an opportunity. I was aware of the business, having worked here as a consultant. Matthew Elvin, who was the incumbent MD at the time here, was somebody who I knew, and I contacted, went through the right channels and contacted Matt, and here I am.
And so what's your role today?
So today I am the Managing Director of Ahern Australia, and I'm also the President of Snorkel Asia.
Okay, and so let's go back to when it was Snorkel Australia. Can you talk through, I'm assuming most people that are listening know what Snorkel is, but just want to talk through what the products were like back then, and have they evolved a lot since then? Like, what's the product lines look like today?
I'll take you on a little bit of a history journey,
Sure.
if that's okay. So, look, they have. I mean, from Snorkel, its infancy. I mean, a gentleman by the name of Art Moore started Snorkel back in, I think it was 1959, and what he was really manufacturing was the telescoping boom sections for fire engines to enable them to put the fire hoses on the top of the boom set in order to tackle high-rise fire. In the early 70s, I think he saw an opportunity to use that same technology and turn it into a boom lift to enable people to be lifted. I think they first started using it on fire engines, using the boom set carrying baskets, and then he applied that into manufacturing, self-propelled boom lifts. So, initially started with fire engines, it then went into boom lifts, and then he expanded then into other products within the elevated work platform sector, such as scissor lifts, etc. But that's really where it started. And have they changed over the years? Well, they have, and thankfully they have, because the machines have been, over all these years, they continue to be made safer, and more robust.
Yeah, and then so Don Ahern acquiring the business would have been a big change then for the organisation.
Well, it was a massive change for the company. And look, I'll just explain Don's involvement and why he became involved in Snorkel. At that time, the company was, prior to Don's ownership, the company was owned by a UK business called Tanfield, and during the GFC, the Tanfield had gone through a fairly difficult period, and they had disruption in their supply chain and parts supply and all those sorts of things. Don Ahern, through his rental business in the US, was the largest owner of snorkel equipment globally, and he was looking at what he needed to do to ensure ongoing supply for his product. And he determined at that time the best thing for him to do was to actually buy the company. Now, Don already had manufacturing businesses. He's got another manufacturing business called Extreme Manufacturing. And through Extreme Manufacturing, he purchased Snorkel. So, and what that did was, allowed him then to take ownership of the business and to then take ownership of its future direction. So, the first things that Don did after buying Snorkel was went around and settled all the old debt. He then invested heavily in redesigning the products because the Snorkel products really hadn't had a significant change in their design in a number of years. So, he really set about modernising and bringing the Snorkel product range up to current expectation in terms of and leading market in terms of its scissor lift design and capability, and also with our boom lifts. And we've been just working through the whole range of products since 2014 or late 13 when Don acquired the business.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, like the influence that he would have had on the industry by itself. Like the fact that he's gone out and said, all right, I want to ensure I can keep my supply, but I also want to improve the products that I own, and to just go out and buy the company. That's amazing, isn't it?
It is. Look, I mean, you have to be in the position to be able to do that as well, right? So, but yeah, look, I mean, he did have that influence, and for the people in the business, it's just been such a wonderful thing. His passion for the product and his individual involvement in some of its design is really wonderful and appreciated. I mean, he's we call him the frustrated engineer because his understanding of engineering practice and designing is as good as our engineers.
Wow, that's amazing. So how many years have you been with Ahern Australia now?
So I've completed 7. I'm into my 8th year this year.
Okay, and so over those 8 years, has much changed within the organisation with the product lines as well?
Well, it has. I mean, look, one of the benefits that we've had through the change of brand and name in Australia is that from Snorkel Australia to Ahern Australia is that being branded Ahern Australia has allowed us to do things that we wouldn't have been able to do just under the Snorkel brand, and that's sell and support and maintain other manufacturers' equipment. So in Australia today, we're also the Australian distributor for Ruthman Blue Lift spider lifts. And most recently, we've taken on the agricultural equipment distributorship for Farrison Industries out of Italy. So we're now selling their agricultural range of telehandlers and feed mixer wagons. And I can tell you today that we've also just signed to become the Australian distributor of the ALSA products, being their range of small telehandlers, rough terrain forklifts, and their dumper product.
Oh, very nice. Very exciting.
So for us, I mean, the change to being Ahern has actually allowed us to expand ourselves and to look at doing, complementary products to the things that we already do, and to look at branching out into different market segments such as the agricultural space, which we wouldn't have had any option to previously.
Yeah, those spider lifts are pretty cool, aren't they? How small they can go down to.
Yeah, look, the Blue Lift range of spiders we have. I mean, we do everything from an 11 metre to a 31 metre. And you're right. I mean, the range that the Blue Lift provides really does satisfy, pretty much every market segment that you need a spider lift for the application. So anything from small shopping centre applications where they're just hanging decorations to arborists, working out and doing tree lopping, to rental companies wanting an all-purpose machines. It's a great product, and we're really happy to be the distributor in Australia.
Just looks a bit futuristic when you walk through, and you imagine 20 years ago walking down the street and seeing this spider-looking machine set up on the side of the road.
Well, not only that. I mean, it's you see the machine actually just driving down the road because of radio remote controls these days. I mean, the machine's actually not attached to the operator, so it is. I mean, it is quite. We've moved forward and significantly in terms of technology in these machines.
Yeah, and so having 27 years at Coates, how much has that helped you moving into that role within Ahern Australia?
Oh, look, I mean, for me, moving back into Ahern and the Snorkel product initially was a little bit like coming home. It was a product that I was familiar with. Even at my time at Coates, I mean, Coates had Snorkel products in their fleet at that point in time. I was aware of the business, and who they were. I could see the journey that they were going on under Don, and but it really, I suppose for me, it was all that prior history has just enabled me to come back into products that I know and be effective.
Very nice. So when you think back to when you're 15 years old and you're a mechanic, and today you're a managing director, like, how does that make you feel? Like, is it hard to sort of like reflect and that so much has happened over that too?
Look, it is. It's it's something that I am wonderfully proud of, but it's also something that I'm greatly appreciative of for all of the opportunity that I have been provided with throughout my career. And don't get me wrong, I mean, the opportunities only present themselves because you're doing something right. But at the end of the day, being able to, being given those opportunities has just made the difference in my life. And and Coates was just such a wonderful, grounding and sounding board for all of that, and they've been such a wonderful platform for so many people in the company. It's not just it's not just me. Other people have also come through that organisation and started off in whether it be transport and driver roles or hire controllers, and have moved on into much more senior positions. And it has been that business which has enabled those people to get that start. And been provided that opportunity.
And so, how would you describe yourself as a managing director? Like, what are the qualities that you want to push through the Ahern Australia business? Like, if you sat back and sort of were looking at yourself, like, how would you really describe your mentoring, your management style within the business?
Okay, so look, I put it down to a set of values. Realistically, what I try and impart to my team here today at Ahern Australia is really a set of values. And it's not just my values, but they're values that I resonate with. And it's really about things like teamwork. And it's really about things like taking ownership. Because realistically, as an individual, you need to take ownership of your role and the things around you. And things that might not even be your responsibility. But if you get in and assist there, all you do is create, number one, a better outcome for the business and yourself. But you find that you're working then as part of that team, right? And that's another part, which is just around teamwork. So, and for me, and I guess the other thing which I try and impart onto my team here is a sense of urgency. It can't wait. When a customer's talking to us about whatever it might be, a repair on a piece of equipment, or they're looking to purchase a piece of equipment, or we're dealing with a supplier about an issue. It's all around sense of urgency and having that completed so that they understand that they're number one, they're important to us. No matter what position they're in. And the same thing goes for my employees. I just look at them and say, I want all of them to be valued. I want them to feel valued in the organisation. So, I try and impart that down to my managers and my team.
Yeah. Okay. And so if we go back and look at some of the challenges that you faced in your early part of your career, maybe when you were a GM or maybe the even a mechanic, going back that far, compared to the challenges that you face today, like what are the different types of challenges, do you think?
In the main, I actually think that the challenges can be quite similar. It's really then the level of responsibility which changes. So if you look at simple things like your customer interaction and customer development, asset management, it's servicing of equipment, it's all of those basic components. Those are still challenges, and it's then the level of responsibility you have for managing those, and the same goes for managing of people, right? It's just the level of responsibility you have and where that goes. Things like safety, occupational health and safety, and strategy. You're always dealing with those, even in lower management roles. It's just a level of the responsibility and a level of involvement in those that you have. So here today, obviously, I'm responsible as the managing director for the business's strategy overall, and our business planning. I'm also responsible then for corporate governance and those things, but and all of the finance stream behind that. But in the main, I mean, most of those challenges are, are quite similar. It's just a level of responsibility and the amount of time you might devote to them.
Yeah, and I guess it's being less reactive to things and probably more planning.
Oh yeah, well, certainly it is. I mean, as I said, and that's around the strategy and business development component. As a managing director, I mean, it really is then around, directing the team and looking at what we can better do to improve our business performance, and all of those key metric items.
Yeah. And so, over your career, who do you think has played a big influence on you, maybe from a mentor perspective?
Look, I've been fortunate. I've had a number of mentors in my life, but if I go way back, when I first became a hire controller, I was really fortunate enough to be introduced to a sales representative by the name of Jack King. And Jack at that point in time became my mentor. He was a wonderful salesman, and he taught me everything at that time that I knew about sales, and they were the things that I've actually taken with me then through the rest of my life, and just in terms of customer engagement and customer retention, and sense of urgency. I mean, I think he was the first person to start driving that into me. So Jack certainly played a big part in my life early on. Then I've already mentioned him a couple of times, the operations manager and then general manager, Alan Forbes. I really didn't realise, as I was working through my time at Coates in the various roles, how much Alan Forbes would actually shape my life. And, he was, to me, a wonderful leader and a very good manager. And, he gave me so much of his time, and helped guide me, through those various roles. I mean, he had a vested interest. He didn't want me to fail either, right? So he wanted me to succeed in those roles. But he was, a wonderful mentor. And then finally, I'd say, the finance director and then COO of Coates, Gary Woods. Gary was my mentor through my general management years, and he was just a tremendous help to me and assistance to me in enabling me to come up to speed for managing a business which was turning over $200 million a year. So, and ensuring just, giving me that support that I needed to, and a bit of a sounding board for when I was questioning myself around a particular item or something. But he was a tremendous mentor, and, I still call him a friend today.
Mm. Jack King, 47 years in the industry, and 47 years at Coates, I should say. Imagine how many people he's mentored over that time.
Well, I've got a little story for you. So when I was the branch manager at Alexandria, I remember that Jack was still my sales representative at the time. And I remember at one point in time he said to me, Glenn, he said, when you're general manager of this company, I just want you to remember the guys that helped you get there. And I laughed it off at the time, but I think I held true.
That's very nice. We'll make sure that Jack listens to that on this podcast.
Yeah, very good.
So in terms of the career progression, you're moving really up in terms of various roles. How do you sort of keep sharp? Do you do things like a lot of reading? What do you sort of do?
Yeah, look, I do. I mean, look, you've got to stay abreast of what's happening. So I am continually looking at, reading. I'm actually looking at the moment as whether I'm 57 years old. At the moment, I've just recently turned 57, and I'm looking at the moment as whether I need to put myself back through another course just to sharpen the skills again, to get my head back in the right space, and to look at things that will benefit me in making this a better business. So I'm always trying to better myself as well as trying to look at my team's development at the same time.
So I think that's probably a good thing to touch on. A lot of people, when they think about studying, they think of it as just getting a piece of paper, but it's really important to take what you learn in that study and apply it to your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, don't get me wrong, I think learning of any type is always valuable because you never know what opportunity might present it to you and whether those skills might allow you to pursue a different sort of career or something. For me, it's about really looking at development which assists me to improve the business that I can apply in my day-to-day activities here. So those sorts of things are what I focus on and what I try and focus on for my team.
Yeah. And so how do you define success?
Okay, so in business, it's really around, achievement of key metrics and targets. It's ensuring, safety of your employees. It's ensuring that the business is in a good operating position. For me, it's I take on some of the personal aspects of that, and I look at people who I think I've assisted in their lives to progress further. And I've been fortunate at Coates that I think I've been involved in many people's lives who either started with me at Coates or progressed further at Coates and are all in senior and executive type roles today. And I like to take a bit of success from that as well.
And in personal life?
Look, I mean, it's all about family for me. It's all about ensuring that my family's safe and healthy. Obviously it's along the way you build wealth and those sorts of things as well, but it's for me it's around the safety and security of my family, and I've been very fortunate there as well.
And so have you really focused on keeping a balance as well between work and family?
I'll say that I do, and my wife will say that I don't. But look, I mean, there are a lot of hours in the day. You try and make sure that the time that you do spend with the family is with them. But at times, unfortunately, in an MD role, business prevails, and you have to do some of those things. But certainly, we make sure that we have the right amount of time.
And so, if you go back and talk to young 18-year-old Glenn, what would you say to him?
Yeah, head down, just keep doing what you're doing. It'll be okay. No, look, I mean, I think I wouldn't do anything differently. I think the path that I've chosen and what I've achieved, I'm very happy with. And for others, somebody in a similar position, I just suggest that continue to work hard, continue to do the things that that other people may not want to do, but might progress you within the company, and get you noticed, because I mean that's really what it comes down to, and demonstrating your commitment to a business. Demonstrate ownership, demonstrate teamwork. They're the things which really companies see and value. Yeah.
Very nice. All right, Glenn. Well, thank you for coming on the Rental Journal podcast.
Mark, thank you for having me.